Now we have some members that need to have a good morning. Places to go, people to see, and all that good stuff. Want to call this meeting, the Criminal Justice Committee meeting, November 15, 2017, to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Mr. Hess? Mr. Washington? Mr. Legess? Mr. Stauffenberg? Mr. Vickery? Mr. Tholen? Mr. McConnell? Mr. Scott? Mr. Snipes? Mr. Seroy? Mr. Einfeld is out in the hall. Ms. Evans? Mr. Payton? Ms. Dunbar? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Lear? We have a quorum.
And
Mr. Washington.
And Mr. Washington. I don't have any public commentary at this time. I need a motion to approve the minutes from September 13th, 2017 and October 11th, 2017. Mr. Hess? Mr. McConnell? All in favor? Opposed? All right. Judicial. Judge Kramer is not present. Circuit clerks. Ms. Cianci is not present. She has a memo in the packet. I need a motion to approve her monthly report. Ms. Parker, Mr. Payton, all in favor? Opposed? You can read at your leisure the report and her memo. No public defender at this time. That means I need a motion to approve his monthly report. Mr. Vickery, Mr. Washington, all in favor? Opposed? And moving forward to Mr. Latham.
The only one here.
Come on down.
The top half, please.
Yeah. You have Tom's monthly report in your packet. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Vickery, Mr. Legess, all in favor? Opposed? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Again, the same kind of stuff I always said. We attempted 746 field contacts in October. 650 were successful, and 1,834 office contacts for a total of 2,484 contacts in November. And you can see 26,131 contacts year to date. 79 investigations, 150 drug tests last month. We screened 22 minors for detention and detained 14. We currently have 18 in detention, 16 at River Valley, 2 at Jerome Combs. And nobody was detained last night, so any questions on the, I didn't get an email or text, so.
Any questions, Ms. Parker? Nope.
The juveniles being detained, what are their crimes? What seems to be the problem with juveniles?
Well, I mean, it's anything and everything. And when we screen them, part of it is the current offense. If the police department arrests them, they call us, say we arrested them on this. But we also look at any kind of background. Are they on probation currently?
Okay.
On violation status, and that all adds into the screening instrument.
Okay.
So it's a wide range of anything. Some departments call us on everything, and if they arrest a minor, they're going to call us. Other ones are very familiar with the individual or how it works, and they only call us on certain ones.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's it's all over the map.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Latham?
I don't have too much this month. Just we are moving. I know we discussed a couple meetings ago about the vehicles and cameras that we're using that extra grant and aid money to offset. That's been ordered. That's moving. And I also talked at the same time about my need to replace computers. We have some of the oldest computers, according to Kevin, working in the county. I don't speak the language, so I'm going through my meetings with Kevin about computers, so I don't want to, but they can't even patch. We're on Microsoft Word 2003, and they can't even patch that. We're so far behind. Anyway, I'm moving to replace those with our special funds, and that's why getting the vehicles and cameras is so important, because I use special funds to get these computers replaced. And then we'll start worrying about the radio replacement that I also talked about at the same time, which is going to be very costly. So,
Mr. Vickery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Tom, your grants, how are we doing financially on the grants? How far behind are they? And
We're
just a
through-
brief synopsis on that. Thank you.
Usually I look at that before I come in here, but we're through December for sure. Maybe through I had to look. We had a couple good months where we were receiving it monthly. I was hoping, and last time it was the Monday before I reported here. That Wednesday, and I was hoping we would get another one this month because it's good timing to report that, but I didn't. So we had a couple months. I think it's through February, but I'll correct that next time if I'm wrong. So it's still, the answer to your question is still, when we get it, we get it. No, no.
Anything else?
Just like the computer replacement, that's about 23 computers. The drug court auction held on October 27th went well. I appreciate everyone here that was there, who donated. They're still working on the final numbers they collected, but it was, they're looking at a few $1,000s more than they made last year. And like I said, it's a simple auction. It's a very basic auction, but it covers enough to cover the drug testing for drug court and other things they use that money for. So thank you to everybody who was there for that. And drug court graduation. The next drug court graduation will be Friday, December 1st at 9:30 in courtroom 200. So anyone's welcome. It's December 1st, Friday, December 1st, 9:30, courtroom 200.
If you haven't had a chance, I'd highly recommend going. It's pretty, yeah,
It's
highly recommend it.
that's all I have to report this month. So if I don't see anybody, have a good Thanksgiving.
You do the same. Thanks, Tom. State's attorney is not here. He's currently working with a local agency about an incident that occurred last night. He notified me this morning, so he will update the committee next month. And there's no grand jury report, but he will update, and regarding the incident last night too as well. He'll update the committee. And that leaves us with the coroner's office. Mr. Gissner. Yeah, you're the grand prize winner. Come on down. I need a motion to combine and approve my monthly reports. Mr. Dolan, Mr. Washington, all in favor? Opposed? Morning.
Morning to you, everybody. Right,
Oh, yeah.
just in our statistics is basically right where I predicted at last December. We've been averaging a little over 10 autopsies a month, which we were around 6. Right now, at this point right now, we're at 126 autopsies that we've had this year, which is, remember, last year was 96. So you can see that we're quite far over on the autopsies. The rest of it is very self-explanable. Getting down to the accidents, down to the overdoses. Roughly hanging still in there at 53. We've got 2 pending, which we probably think is going to be 55. Again, in December I predicted 51, and we're just about a little over that. We're going to be close to 60. So some of the good things that we, since the last time we met, our grant, we're going continuing after that, another $225,000 off that grant. Yesterday, I got nominated to be on the opioid committee down in Springfield, the governor's task force. I accepted that because I want to get into a little bit more with the opioid situation. They were extremely, IDPH was there, they were extremely proud of Kankakee County, where we're on target with our forms that we fill out. I learned a lot about that program, where people always ask about where's it come from. ISP was involved with that, several other police departments, a couple of attorneys, and we learned about where it comes out of Chicago and it filters on down. These are the exact words that they said. It filters on down into DuPage County, Joliet County, and ends up in the areas below I-80 a map of where a lot of the hits are being made. And we're looking, when I look, I can almost tell you without even looking what county it is, where ours is. It's amazing to know that this is, as I say, is not peaked yet. So it's going to continue on. We also developed, like I say, they're going to develop a map. I'm going to be involved in that. We go back down in December. The good thing about this, Mr. Chairman, that when I go down there, wherever I go now on opioids is being paid for by the grant. So as of yesterday, put in over 300 miles in Springfield and back. I didn't stay down there. Came back. Besides my wages it is, so we'll be able to turn that in, and that doesn't come to me. It goes directly to the general fund. When Eric's teaching, when Eric teaches, as of yesterday and today and tomorrow, he gets paid for that, and it goes into the general fund. So that's a plus that we're giving back the money back to the general fund. Also, we're participating in a, which we found out about, and we're going after it, is another grant participating into the Illinois Violent Death Reporting System. We were eligible for funding through IDPH through statewide intentional opioid overdoses, reporting the systems, and which we're doing right now, funding for the toxicology and testing. So if we've got it might pay for some of our lab work that we do, which is expensive. So that was a plus to come across that, and we're going to land that one. So I think that we're continuing on teaching throughout the county, and I want everybody to mark in their book right now on January 16th, 2018, out at KCC. We were going to have, the sheriff gave me a tip on Tim Ryan that he saw when he was in, I think, Peoria at a seminar. He's a leading teacher throughout the state of United States right now on opioids. He was pronounced dead 3 times, and the Narcan brought him back. He was a millionaire. His office was out of Wrigley Building in Chicago. He was the one selling drugs. So he's basically free from all the drugs, and he's Eric and I saw him in Watseka speak. He's a great speaker, and he'll be here for us. We're also going to take him to one of the schools where he can talk to the kids, and then also in front of the chiefs, the police chiefs and the sheriff and the rest of them at their meeting in January. So what time? It's going to be from 6 to 5, 7. I'm sorry, change the hours. Okay. I will get flyers out. The grant pays for billboards, so we've got 4 billboards going up, and also I'll be on the radio and the news, bringing this around. This is a great speaker to see, and you want to know everything about the drugs, you listen to him and you'll understand about how bad it is. So, other than that, I'm going to clear. Anything else, Eric?
Mr. Washington?
Any questions?
About a month ago, I think it was, Walgreens announced that they would be stocking the antidote for opioids. Do you know if we have them in this area yet?
That's a great question. It was brought up yesterday. It's not only that, Walgreens, CVS, it's out on the market. They're giving it to people. We're seeing it on the out in the scene now, of Narcan in maybe their bag that they've got. Yeah, it is going to be coming through here. I'm kind of watching that, and now that I know that it is coming on both CVS and Walgreens, I'll be looking for that. The price of it is in Chicago is $70. So, that ain't bad.
That's not bad for a life.
That's right. So, yeah, that's a good question. I learned about that yesterday, but I was really amazed about how that comes down and comes right into the Kankakee County area. So,
Scary. I went to the one speaker that was in town last week. The young guy,
Yeah.
Marion, he was
Scary.
He's gonna speak with us in May.
Okay. He was good.
Thanks for going to it. Any other questions?
All right. We have the sheriff. You have sheriff's monthly report. I need a motion to put on file. Mr. Payton, Mr. Legess, all in favor? Opposed? Good morning.
Good morning. Diane should have emailed the report out. Hopefully you all got it. A couple things to pay attention to on the numbers. Our ICE numbers continue to increase slightly. Going back to September of this year, where we were averaging 120. In October, we averaged 133. And so far in November, we're averaging 151. That's just ICE. That doesn't include our Cook County, our U.S. Marshals, and those numbers are staying fairly consistent. So the downside, if you look at our numbers, our local number, as we've said before, in December of 2016, we were averaging 203. Fast forward to September 2017, we were at 267. In October, we were at 270. And so far in November of this year, we're averaging 282. With a high of 289. Those numbers, that 289 number is the highest that our local number has been since we moved out here in 2005.
Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are the what are the charges? I mean, why such a big increase all of a sudden? Is it the drugs or?
Probably because the state's attorney is doing what he said he'd do. They are locking people up and they are holding the bad guys in custody, which makes us all safe. So, questions on the corrections side? We'll talk a little bit about the transport numbers as we talk about some things later in the agenda. On the sworn side, I think it's important to note that this year alone, our civil process revenue was increased by over $180,000. That was due to a couple things. It was due to increased service by our deputies, and if you recall, back in April or May, you approved and the full board approved those fee increases that were significantly low for a number of years. So I don't look for that number to change much. In fact, I look for it to maybe increase, and I've got a couple ideas as to how that can increase a little bit too. So we've also seen increases in our court security fund, our fee to take bond, and our booking fees. Although they are not quite as significant as our civil process, they are still increases that we didn't have before. So all pluses. We've had one deputy who has submitted his retirement letter effective January of 2018, and I do plan to replace that officer. The one thing I would like you to consider relating to civil process is to allow us to add a specific officer to strictly serve civil process papers. Couple reasons. Number one, it is difficult for our patrolmen who are out there running from call to call to serve papers as well. And without getting into specific numbers in an open meeting about who we have on the street, when the radio calls them for a call, that's a paper that they're not serving. So, I think it would be advantageous for us to really consider adding one to strictly to leave the people who are on the street and allow that officer to serve those papers, and basically all they do Monday through Friday. Not to say that our patrolmen would not also assist, because they would. There's weekends, they're still out there, they would still be serving papers as well when they can. But I think it would be advantageous to have one person dedicated to doing that, so.
Quick question.
Yeah.
In regards to that position, would it be possible to have maybe a retired officer maybe do a part-time to save cost, that they can go a few hours a day?
If you can find one.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Any
Hold
questions?
your microphone down.
I would just say that the situation that we're in, I can't see how I could support hiring another full-time person to serve papers. I would look into private support to do something like that, but for the next couple of years, really, we're not in the hiring business. I hate to say this, over current levels. That's just where
Private
I'm
support,
at.
what do you mean?
Well, if there's people in the private sector that can serve papers rather than us, and I don't know if that's
You
possible.
wanna address the private issue?
There's a couple things with that. Number one, when they serve them privately, we don't get any revenue from it. And what happened in the past is we lost our numbers, and again, I'm not gonna go to specific numbers, but when they drop really low and you're running call to call, these papers will come in, our guys don't get them served, they get returned without services. These attorneys and everybody else go to private paper servers to get them served, because they gotta get their papers served. So we lose on that end too, because we're not getting them served, and if we hire private people to do it, we're not gonna see anything from that. That revenue stream is not gonna come to us. They get the revenue for serving the papers. So it's not our,
And again, I'm throwing this out there as an opportunity to generate revenue, because I don't hear any other ideas.
Ms. Dunbar?
Is there any way we could see, thank you, Mr. Chairman, is there any way we could see because I don't know what your revenue is, like per delivery, and show us,
Yeah, there's a
That
fee,
the return-
there's a fee schedule. that was
show us the
approved
return on investment
by-
of hiring somebody to do that based on the revenue generated by it?
Sure.
Could we get that? Thanks.
Sure.
Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Snipes?
Though I don't make things a union issue, wherever I'm not in the business of taking union jobs and put them out to private source. It's like a bad recipe. When you negotiate or do anything as a union president, I would probably be frowning upon that. But what I would suggest is, if you're at $180,000, you have the potential to make more with that private server. I would want to see cost-benefit analysis to justify putting the officer there and the revenue that we possibly could obtain if that officer's there, and if it outweighs the cost of, or in the cost-benefit analysis, if it outweighs the cost, then it could be justifiable to have one just there for that particular purpose. And the other caveat is, you don't want to get into the revenue-losing business when you have the potential to gain revenue in that area. That's just my feelings upon it.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. McCreary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we could look at that at finance and look at the cost-benefit thing. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna do anything here, but sure. I don't have a problem with that. I just trying to come up with ideas to generate more revenue. And the last section on our report, the revenue, the numbers are greater than back in FY 14. We would obviously like to get them back to FY13 numbers, and that's certainly our goal, and that's certainly where we're heading. So, you know, we continue to do that and continue to try to, you know, as I've said before, there are expenses that go with this, but you know, if revenue is what we're looking for, then revenue is what we'll try to get you. Corrections vehicles. Apparently, this was never had gone through committee. I thought it did, but well, I can tell you that I have we have 2 new ones that we got last year that are in service. I've got 3 2009 vehicles with the following mileage: 158,000, 149,000, 122,000. I have a 2011 van that's got 201,000 miles on it. I've got 2 buses, a 2005 and a 2007, that both have over 96,000 miles on them. We have said before, and we can say it again, we have to invest if we want to continue to transport. And I mentioned the transports, or I didn't mention the transports because I wanted to mention it now. If you look at the transports under Section B, and through October of 2017, we've made 351 transports for ICE. Those are not going to go down, and that's part of the expense that we talked about when we have this program. And it's important, it's imperative that we have equipment that is not going to break down on the highway, because we've had buses break down, we've had vans break down. That puts everybody in a bad situation, and it's imperative that we continue to move forward with keeping our fleet updated.
Mr. Hess?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I thought when you got the 2 vans, there was 2 more on order.
There are, but I guess they've never went through committee.
This committee, I believe they did.
So did I. I thought they did too.
And I think we talked about it at finance after it came through this committee.
I thought we did too. I was told we didn't, so I'm just going by what I was told.
Chairman Wheeler?
I looked into it, and it was recommended to have the price come to finance, and we never had a resolution out of finance to purchase the vehicle. So we did a search, and then I had the state's attorney do a search. So the vehicles are here, so we have to figure out what we're going to do based on that. So obviously we have to act, but to me, this committee's already said that they believe that we need the vehicle, and I would still agree, or the vehicles, I still agree with the need. The finance committee's gonna have to figure out how we're gonna pay for it, knowing the ultra trim budget we have next year and the following year. So it's just 2 vehicles. I say just 2. What are we, 7,500 a year? Or I mean a payment?
I can't recall.
It's not debilitating the amount that we would be adding. But it's just, you know, we've already agreed at this level that we think that the need is there, and then we have to, you know, you gotta feed the golden goose, if you will. So moving on to, you know, the finance again to figure out where it's gonna come from. That's the problem, so.
Mr. Hess, that's all in favor? Opposed?
I know we canceled the finance committee meeting this month.
We can put it as a line item at the committee of the whole, because there we are doing paying claims, so we can discuss it there.
Okay.
If it's, because we have to tackle this. We have a lease that we have to execute or otherwise. So let the motion reflect that to committee of the whole, please.
Committee of the whole.
Thank you.
Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get on my horse again, but this just befuddles me. Absolutely befuddles me that with the sheriff is bringing in this amount of money, and we have to go outside to get approval for vehicles that is should be included in the cost of doing business. I don't understand why we can't take some of this money that comes in, instead of going to the general revenue and going around circles. In a business, you have overhead, and you take the money, the profits you make, and you use it for buying vehicles and buying whatever tools you need to get the job done. And we're handicapping the sheriff because we gotta go through 47 different committees to do something that should already be done with the money that he gets. It just absolutely blows my mind that in a business you wouldn't do that. I'm done.
All right.
Well, and I appreciate that, Mr. McConnell, but there obviously are expenses that, we've talked about, and we laid these out, the additional expenses for 2017 at the last finance meeting. So there are obviously expenses that need to be covered with that money that comes in. I think the thing that sometimes we forget, and as I've said for a number of times and for a long, long time, that we have to stop looking at this as a profit business. I think we get in our head that, we're going to generate 8.4, 8.5 million this year, and there's, that's all profit, and it's not. There are certainly expenses that go with it. I think the number that we have to continue to monitor is what amount of money is this program saving for us to house our local inmates? And as I told the Finance Committee this year, even with the higher expenses and the overtime, it's still $3.6 million. And that's still $3.6 million that I think, were it not for this program, I'm not quite sure how we would operate. So,
something? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I'm not very bright, but I think I got that one figured out.
Chairman Wheeler?
Thank you. I think to the sheriff's point, and I absolutely agree, this program allows us to fund not just the program, but also the patrol division and all the equipment the patrol division gets and the vehicles they get and the equipment that they're getting in their cars and all of it supports the elections process and the what's going on in the courthouse. So it is completely propping up all of the county operations, and that's why we need to make sure, along with housing our own prisoners. So when we start to talk about profit, there is no profit. It allows us to basically operate as we are. And for that, I'm thankful. It's not like that is not the case. We just have to figure out, with all those other obligations, how do we fit this into that puzzle? It's not a no. It's more of really a finance Sudoku puzzle. How do you put it together to make sure that we can still operate everything else and still keep this moving the way that it should and needs to. And I think that may be lost on folks from time to time, that it's allowing us to keep what we have and operate and get out of the hole at the same time.
Mr. Snipes, then Mr. Vickery.
Down to a little bit of my thunder when you talk about the cost of doing business. I have a method when I look at the cost of doing business versus the cost of going out of business versus sustainability. And when I asked the question some time ago about ICE, I said, are the expenses to operate the business incorporated into the fee that we are, getting back? And that answer at that time was yes. So I'm sure vehicles and things, the cost of transportation had to be attended, given the fact that we transport 351 individuals. We don't absorb that cost. That cost is reimbursed to us, if I'm not mistaken. And so therefore there is a number as to that cost of transportation, and we need to look at it. Now, if we're getting buses that break down, it's going to cost us whatever, I don't know what the salvage the other buses and get something back on them or get a bit of steel, if someone is basically needs to get revenue back. But we do want to be able to get from point A to point B without you having complaints, because if I'm understanding ICE is very particular as to their operation, given that book that the sheriff had and the whole 9 yards to the threshold they had to beat. So with that being said, so that it doesn't sound oxymoronic when we are being live streamed, financial watchdog that keeps on that. So I'm sure they're going to look at the monies that's generated, the cost, the expense that we have buffered up in there, that we can have to take out without having to do a lot of road rage through different committees. I think that's just the proper way of doing business, and that's just my take upon it. This is sustainability of something that's allowing us to continue to hold up the pillars of the justice system.
Duly noted. Mr. Vickery.
Yes, Sharon, are those leased vehicles, have we signed lease papers or done anything?
No. not
Okay,
yet.
so they're here.
They're here.
They're here? Okay, so the process has to continue. We got them here, we've got to sit here
And they're aware. I mean, they're aware that.
okay. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
haven't done it. We haven't signed anything without.
Okay.
Once we found out that there wasn't approval, we didn't sign anything.
Okay.
What's that? No, not yet. And then lastly, and after this last two conversations, I'm sure you'll love to hear this. The next thing on the agenda is 2018 squad cars. As you know, we replaced our 2011 squad cars, or at least we're in the process of it still. Our 2012 squad cars, we have 11 of those 2012s that are on the road. Actually, that's not accurate. We have 10 on the road because we pulled one off because we had one go down that's going to cost about $4,500 to repair. All but 4 are out of warranty, which means they're over 100,000 miles, with the high end of 130,000 miles. And just for information, our 2013 squads, 11 cars, we have 2 over 100,000, 4 over 90,000, so those probably aren't far behind. We're averaging between 15,000 and 20,000 miles on each car per month. We have a 680 square mile county, and again, without getting into numbers on duty, at one particular time, we have no control over where we get a call. If we're sitting on the east side of the county, we get a call on the west side of the county, or vice versa. So our miles are racking up. And the biggest issue, the bigger issue, is being out of warranty, knowing that when a transmission goes, when something else goes, the ball bearings, which are another issue that we're dealing with out of warranty, you know, you're talking anywhere from 2, and in the case of the one car that we pulled off that we didn't fix, it was $4,500. So it's a quarter of a car almost. So I was done. If anybody didn't.
Oh, Chairman Wheeler? Okay.
My only comment is if I think the discussion should center around need and not finance. So if the committee agrees on the need, we can have a financial discussion elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so I would agree with the need, because if you don't start the rotation now, you know, it turns into a financial situation later. So
Yeah,
I would say need is yes.
I think the goal, and I appreciate that, I think the goal here is, you know, we went into that whole crunch. I mean, we got cars in 2011, 2012, 2013, and then we hit rock bottom. Everybody understood that. But now we're going to go to trade these cars in or send them to auction or do whatever. I think planning wants a couple that we'll try to get them the best we can of what we have. But, you know, the trade value and the value of these cars goes down so much when they're, you know, once they get across 100,000 miles and upwards. You know, if we can, in that rotation, and I know we've talked about this a number of times for those that have been on the board for a number of years, you probably heard this spiel before, but if we can get them out of here with 75, 80,000 miles on them, we get so much more in return than we do once they hit that threshold. And it's, you know, I know it's tough, and I know, you know, we're pinching every penny we have in every department, but I think, you know, to put people out on the street and, you know, people going 80 miles an hour to a call, responding to an emergency call, you know, we just need vehicles that we can rely on.
It's a safety issue for our staff.
It is.
Ms. Dunbar?
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, you were super excited at the county board meeting because your budget was right where you needed it to be. How are these vehicles represented in that budget?
Next year?
Yeah.
I don't believe they are.
Is there a reason they weren't?
We're trying to stay within a number, but I mean, I can't, I could put everything I want in a, but until they're approved by the finance committee, I can't, you know, budget for them in 2018 if we're not gonna. I can add them if you'd like.
I mean, it just seems like obviously we knew that this was coming and you knew that it was coming and there's a need, so I feel like it would be better to deal with it at the front end during the budget negotiation than now after, you know, we're about ready to pass a budget.
All right.
Just an observation, and I'm still pretty new, so maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree. I mean, I think you're right. We're going by a number to get to a number. So, I agree.
Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. Not long ago, we had a breakdown on maintenance or repairs and everything, and what we spent on repairs, we could have bought a vehicle, maybe a vehicle and a half. I mean, we went through this before, and we're going to end up, I think, I've been here for a while, but I think several years ago, it was voted on to replace 10 vehicles a year. And we went 3 or 4 years in a row, we didn't buy any, so now we bit the bullet, you know.
Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't question the need. The thing is, I think the report in finance last time, we had about 2.6 million in accounts payable, and we've got to make payroll, and payroll's big. It's, I think the 3 payrolls last month or the month before was 2.4 million. So there were times a year or so ago when we would sit down and determine, first of all, the first priority was payroll, and then what bills could we pay after that? And we were getting cut off from our vendors. So it's a cash flow issue. It's not an anti-issue on anything. It's how do we pay our bills and then provide the coverage that we need for our sheriff's department. The need is not questioned. It's the idea, how do we pay for it? And what priority does it fall into? But payroll has to be paid. We can't have our employees without their checks cleared, and we've got to pay our accounts payable so that we can continue to service our buildings. When you can't buy certain necessities, and our vendors cut us off, it's pretty tough. Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
If I could, before Robert, you let me just say one thing. I think a couple things to keep in mind that I think are very important, and is a credit to not only the full board, Chairman Wheeler and Steve McCarty. We are, from what I understand, and Andy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we are a couple months into next year before we have to get the tax anticipation warrants. And our bills now are within 60 days of being paid, which our vendors are very happy about. So again, I think as a board, as a county, I think we're heading in the right direction. It's a heck of a lot better than 120 days waiting to get paid. So, sorry about that.
Oh, you kind of stole a little of my thunder. I was about to preface that with the state of Illinois. We're reacting a little bit better, but and then the additional comment is this, because I don't know what the warranties are on these particular vehicles.
100,000 miles.
100,000 miles. So at 75, you still have 25. But I was wondering if we know that we're going to keep a vehicle over 100,000 miles. A lot of times they sell extended warranties, and sometimes the cost of purchasing those would outweigh the cost of us just paying when a vehicle drops. So have we looked in that area?
I don't know if they're available on squad cars, the extended warranties. but we will certainly ask. All they can do is say no.
Mr. Einfeld.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, going back to one of your first items here, the number of detainees we have from our own county, could you possibly give me some indication, are a lot of these people waiting to get through our court system, or are they county sentences? I don't know how to hash that out.
I would say about 98% of them are awaiting trial, awaiting to get through our system.
In your opinion, is there, and I don't know, because I don't know, is there some other work we need to be doing with our public defender's office, with the court system to keep, I don't know what the length of time runs on this. Somebody's going through the court system for a month is one thing, going through the court system for a year is a lot of meals and work for you.
I can give you a lot of examples of length of stay from obviously the ones with more serious charges. Their length of stay is going to be significantly longer because in all likelihood they have a bond they can't pay to get out of jail. And when they have serious charges, in all likelihood they are going to go to trial because the prosecutors are probably going to ask for a lengthy sentence, so they may figure that it's better off to hold out and go to trial, so that lengthens their stay. Our average length of stay on our local inmates is slightly over about 8 days. That doesn't seem like a long time, but that takes into account the inmate that's here on an overnight DUI, on a retail theft, who may be postponed the next day, as opposed to, and as we all hear on the news and read the paper, the shootings, the homicides, you know, those individuals will be here 2, possibly 3 years, and it's just working their way through the system.
I had, in reflecting back, listening to the judge earlier, I believe it was 3 meetings ago, and the public defender, you know, they were talking about having a cross up in a court case and the public defender needing a little bit more help, which I do believe we did get him some of it. I was just curious on if it was our court system problem that was keeping it, or is it kind of a normal flow?
Those numbers are fairly normal in the big picture. I mean, obviously we've had our exceptions where we've had a guy here for please silence all cell phones, please. Where we've had somebody who's been here for 10 years because they've gone to trial twice or whatever. But again, those are anomalies that, you know, don't happen very often. But our court process, our state's attorney, our public defender, our courts are getting these individuals through the process, you know, legally with all their due process and everything else. So that's really not an issue.
Thank you very much on that. And one other thing, I believe everybody is, if we recollect back, have realized the conversation on the squad cars, the buses, the transportation. It isn't like it did just pop up this meeting.
Right.
I've heard you bring it up time and time again, as the previous sheriff, and I commend everybody here, finance, the board, Andy, for getting us this far out of what we lose, $7 to $10 million in 1 year's period.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you say, as everybody says and realizes, we went without it. Period. You know, it's
Yep.
The bill has come due, and it's just trying to not revert back into such a big hole at one time. But I'm sure we will work through that.
We'll get through it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chairman Wheeler.
Just maybe a question for Mr. Latham, maybe the sheriff knows. Is that new law take effect on bonding out, or recog bond for people who can't, for minor offenses, can't afford the bond? Does that actually take effect?
January 1st, yeah.
And that may reduce some of that local population, but we just don't have a number.
It may, but remember, the longer they're in jail before they get recog, they get $30 a day credit.
I
Which-
retract that.
Which ultimately will have an effect on
Yeah.
bonds and everything
Yeah,
else.
you're right.
Yeah. They get credit, not pay. Any future fines and everything else?
Welcome to Illinois.
Yeah. It's our governor.
Yeah. Believable. Anything else for the sheriff? Oh,
I have one last thing. I'm sorry, Ray. Go ahead.
careful.
Pull the mic down.
Talk about the squad cars. I know probably 10 is probably a big number. Is there any way you could look at 5 cars and then maybe 5 or 6 months down the line, look at another 5 or something like that? Where,
Sure.
you know, 5 is better than none. Or maybe 2 or 3. I don't know.
Right.
But, sounds to me like something we need to look at.
Commissioner, we proposed that, Mr. Hess said several years ago that we would buy 5 a year and rotate them every year. We have 5 every year.
Oh, we were
Take 'em
10
out.
or 11. Yeah.
Well, whatever,
Yeah.
I thought it was 5, but
Yeah.
the point being is we were going to do that. And we got behind the 8 ball because we didn't have enough brains to figure out how to do this stuff.
We didn't have enough money for anything. There's no doubt about that, but you know, a couple of years we were lucky to make payroll.
It doesn't make sense to me to have that sitting there and not do it for the cost of business, because when you start doing that,
Totally
you start
agree.
reverting back, you don't have the vehicles, therefore you don't have the income, and it's all snowballs.
I had to sign off as vice chairman one time. Menards cut us off. Menards. We didn't have money to pay Menards. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, things were bad.
The last item, the statistics. We have some, but I'd rather just show you the full year, end of the year, rather than just do it in November for a portion of the year. So we'll give you the end of the year report probably in January.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did we approve the circuit clerk and the public defenders?
Yes.
Public defender also?
Yep.
Okay, I got coffee. I didn't know if that was
No
on
problem.
during the time.
We approved your coffee too.
I'm not questioning your
Okay.
leadership. Didn't approve the coffee.
Maybe we'll check it. All right. Any old business? New business? Need a motion to adjourn? Mr. Legess and Ms. Dunbar. Have a